Hi everyone, checking in with you for this week's Midweek Devotional. Well, we know there's a difference between knowing about something versus experiencing it. These are two very different things. For example, we can know about someone by reading books about them. For example, a famous person in history, without ever really having a relationship with that person. But it is something altogether different to know someone in a relationship. Before I met my wife, if someone had written a biography about her, I could have learned all kinds of things about her, but not have known her personally. But by being married to her, I now know her, and not just knowledge about her, but by experience through a relationship. Well, this is a picture of our relationship with God. We can know about God, and that is all some people know. They just know about God. But God doesn't want us to just know about Him. Rather, He desires a personal relationship, one in which we can experience God. So that's my question for us today is, how do we experience God? There's many ways to experience God. It's possible for us to experience God through prayer, through the Bible, through teachings. There's many ways. But today I want to focus on is how do we experience God in worship? So what does worship have to do with this? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to read a classic text on worship found in Psalm 95. I'm going to read verses 1 to 7. The psalmist writes, "Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout aloud to the rock of our salvation. Let us come to Him with thanksgiving and extol Him with music and song. For the Lord is the great God, the great King above all gods. In His hand are the depths of the earth, and in the mountain peaks belong to Him. The sea is His, for He made it, and His hands formed the dry land. Come, let us bow down and worship. Let us kneel before the Lord our Maker. For He is our God, and we are the people of His pasture, the flock under His care. Today, if only you would hear His voice." So what is worship? Worship is the act of subscribing ultimate value to something in such a way as to engage our whole being. See, true worship engages our will, our mind, and our emotions. We see each of these in this psalm. So in verses 1 and 2, we see worship with emotion. They're singing for joy, shouting aloud, thanksgiving, music, and song. In verse 6, we see worship with our will. There's submission, come, bow down, kneel, surrender. In verse 7, we worship with our mind. We hear His voice. That is, we listen to what God says. We think about what He's saying. We consider what His voice is saying to us. If we go through the motions and affirm the beliefs without ever experiencing in our inner being a sense of beauty and joy, then we're missing out on true worship. That is, if we engage our will and our mind but not our emotions, if we don't experience the joy of meeting with God, then we are not worshiping with our whole being. Or if we go and experience a lot of emotion, but it doesn't fundamentally change the way we live, then it's not really worship. See, worship involves bowing and kneeling. These are words of submission. We're submitting to God's will. We're surrendering our own will, surrendering our rights, our preferences, our desires. Worship is the act of ascribing ultimate value to something. Ascribing ultimate value, what does that mean? Well, look at the psalm. It's stemming from something the psalmist is doing. In verse 3 says, "For the Lord is the great God, the great King." In verse 7, "For He is our God." That is to say, because He is the Lord, because He is the great God, because He is the great King, because He is our God, the psalmist is ascribing worth and value to God. Worship starts with thinking, learning, and understanding who God is, what He has done, until it dawns on you His value, His beauty, how magnificent He truly is. Worship is the act of treating God according to His value, His worth. The English word worship comes from the Old English worthship. Worthship, that is to give worth to something. Worship is to see what God is worth, to give God what He is worth, to grasp His worth in such a way that we live in accordance to it, ascribing to God what He is worth to the point that it transforms our whole life. It's not just inspiration or a pick-me-up, it's ascribing ultimate value to God so that it transforms our whole life. That is the way we experience God. Verse 3 implies that our heart has ascribed value to something. True worship is transferring our worship from other things to God. So what do we worship? We worship the deepest desires of our heart. Everyone's put their hope in something. We all have something that we believe our life would be as it should if we just had whatever it is. For example, if I just had more money right now, if I could just get that job I wanted, If I just had a good marriage. If only my children's life wasn't such a mess. If only I were just healed. If only I could just get over this bad habit. Then I would be happy. See, we all have things we worship, things we ascribe ultimate value to, things we believe will give us peace and joy. Something other than the great God and King. You know, whatever controls us is our Lord. We're controlled by the Lord of our life, whatever that may be. You know, maybe it's something we're afraid of losing. What are you afraid of losing? Our ultimate problem is what we worship. Worship recognizes that we have ascribed value to something in our life. When we worship, we are healing ourselves from the things that control our hearts and surrendering them to God. Only then we can worship and experience true freedom from the things of this world that control us. You know, if we completely enjoy God as He is, we'd be perfect, but none of us are perfect. So in worship, we're moving more and more towards God, aligning our whole being with Him as our true object of ultimate worth. So why not take a moment and worship God by recognizing His great worth in your life?